There's always more to the story. Join your hosts, Dr. Eric Shaw, prosecutor Ryan Frank, writer Adrian Bonenberger, and comedian Ryan Connor as they follow up on the most recent episode of Baggage. This is Carry On.
Eric and Ryan and I Eric, that's right. Eric just joined this year. Eric, we had a 10-person league for 16 years, I think? Fantasy football league for about 16 years or so.
Yeah.
And we expanded it to 12 so that Eric could join this year. And and we were just reminiscing how I am not going to be in last place this year, which is awesome because my punishment of this phone case for coming in last place it's pretty embarrassing. It's pretty terrible. How would you describe it? Kind of like a pink purple sparkly clutch purse. It's a clutch purse.
Didn't the beads break off
on day 2? The pearl bead strap broke off. So now what I get is your case like a mouse ears, or like it's a sideways mouse, or like horns or something? Because it's just a curvature.
Well, you saw your new case, right? Well, it's not your case. It's going to be the one that Craig's almost definitely going to get. Did you see that video? Oh my God. I think Lundy found it. We have to find, we'd have to find it, but dude, it's like this, but it's like the size of a phone, but you have to telescope it in order to access the phone. So it like folds out twice. It's like a foot. Yeah, it has to be like a foot and a half long in order to actually access your phone.
Look, the case is terrible. It's really terrible, but it could have been worse. I mean, the chicken thigh shaped one that you guys had picked at one point.
I love that one.
That would have been, that's never going in your pocket. That's never going to fit in your pocket. That would have sucked. I did veto. There was a couple ones that were like super, like just not like offensive. Like I don't want anybody to be offended by it. Like I got to go to court with this thing. Right.
Not the same, but like at work, we always dress up for Halloween. Like it's just kind of like what the office does. But that also is like incredibly awkward sometimes when it's like this like deep mental health visit and I'm like dressed as a fucking frog or a superhero or something. And I'm like, God damn it. Like
at least you're like a family practice. I mean, I think that do they have Halloween days in the ER? I mean, to say
Probably.
Like, we got the results and your husband's not going to make it. And, you're a character out of Frozen is not I don't know. I think that memory would be hard for me to, if I got that news from a doctor. Anyway, Adrian, so you missed the episode with Jason Weems, who is he's just a good guy. He's just a solid, nice guy and really funny. I had not seen his special. I'd seen his comedy before, but I hadn't seen his special Unknown until actually after we recorded. And I think the sign of a funny comic is I'm alone, I'm by myself, I'm like doing the dishes or something, and I'm laughing out loud. Like his stuff about ice. I won't give away any of the jokes, but check out his special Unknown. It was pretty funny.
Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can get it on YouTube too. But yeah, it was good. And the internet liked the episode too, man. Huge reaction from the internet. In fact, what I started doing with the social media stuff is, which I hate. I hate doing the social media stuff, but I opened up an account. I created an account for the podcast for Twitter. I refuse to call it X because that's the stupidest name for a company ever. How arrogant to say a letter, like that's just so stupid. So Twitter, anyway, I opened up a Twitter account and I was like, well, I'll start, I don't know how this works. So I'll start making connections with like at least the other host on the podcast. And I figure, Ryan Connor, you got to have an X account. And so I searched for Ryan Connor on what's that? Yeah. Well, if it's there, it is buried deep behind a lot of Ryan Connor porn star X accounts. Holy cow. It is all like best actress ever. And it's funny too, because all the things about her are like, she's just the greatest actress. I mean,
yeah.
How do I say that? You have to distinguish I mean, Meryl Streep, right?
Right.
Judi Dench, like they're great actresses.
They don't have the range.
You have to.
They don't have the range
right.
that Ryan Connor porn star has.
Yeah, I guess my thing is you have to really qualify it with porn actress. Like she's really great
Well, yeah, I mean,
porn
you could just say
actress,
she has a lot of range, is what I think the Academy would say. I mean, look, Helen Mirren did it in Caligula. What's holding back Meryl Streep from going hardcore?
Well, I mean, I think you'd have to ask her. Who knows Meryl Streep? Somebody knows Meryl Streep. Somebody on this podcast, right?
No. One of my acting teachers is good friends with her. Like they live together and stuff.
That's right. That's come up before. Yeah. That's right. Well, you got a connection. 6 degrees of separation. Find out.
I'll ask.
Find out what the holdup is. Okay.
Has the show started? I can't
tell. Yeah. Let's do the clap real quick.
We were talking about fantasy football. I wasn't sure. Okay.
I was like, if we're going to talk for 10 minutes, we may as well make this part of the fucking episode. All right, let's do the clap real quick. You guys ready?
Well, I want to tell you this. For our listeners, we do a sync clap when we start recording. Here's the secret. We don't need to do the sync clap. That's all.
Why not?
Just putting it out there. You don't have to because the files are synced in our recording software. I use the software too.
We're multi-track. I do the editing multi-track.
Okay.
Well, it gives you a lot more flexibility. You can mess with the levels a lot more. No one cares about this. No one cares about this.
Okay. Fine.
This is a degree of OCD that most people don't have.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll get into it. We'll be a half an hour of just audio tech talk. And you talk about the numbers taking a dive. No, we'll move on from that. But yeah, we do need to sync clap. When we were in the episode, we talked about, spoiler alert, Jason Weems died during a show. He had a severe asthma attack, and he ended up collapsing. He had no pulse or was not breathing for a little over 5 minutes, and they brought him back. So pretty wild story. Mm-hmm. And that gave an opening for Ryan to share his story about how lack of banana resulted in a near-death experience for near fatal levels of low potassium.
Harrowing.
It's
taken away in an ambulance.
In the annals of history, right up there with. You got your own category though. Like, there's not a lot of people that have that same affliction.
Well, one of my friends. This is how it was figured out, and it was passed on to the medics to have them check this when they got me to the hospital. One of my coworkers in my office had the same thing happen to him, and he was driving 10 years prior or something like that. It basically had 2 basketball practices in one day. It's how it happens. You get super dehydrated, you don't replenish. And he's talking to his mom on the phone, and his mom relayed to him later that his voice suddenly went out, and she didn't know where he was or anything, and he's still on the phone. It took she called the police and said, he's coming from this place to this place. Please check along this route. These are his plates. They find him. He's unconscious. They take him to the hospital. He's in there for over 24 hours before they figure out what was wrong with him, and just completely virtually comatose, completely unresponsive. And then for some reason they didn't check or notice potassium levels, and I guess he was kept at least a sustainable level just from his drip once he got to the hospital. And then they were like, "Oh my God!" And then they gave him just the full potassium bag, and he said he just came back to, pretty much immediately, and he was like, "Where am I? How long have I been here?" And he was suddenly completely verbal. So anyway, he told the medics that, because I had I used to go to the gym twice a day back then too. And
so he's with you when you went down?
I'm in the office. Yeah. So I would go to the office.
Okay.
I would go to the gym at 7 and do this workout for an hour and a half. And then I had a couple days in a row where I was drinking coffee right after and not replenishing. And it just, snowballed. And he was able to spot that.
I'm sorry. It's still funny. I know it's funny. I know you almost lost your life.
Yeah.
But I just want to see the conversation where he's like, potassium, make sure you check his potassium. I mean, that's just that there's no non-funny way to deliver that to the medics.
Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, look, it's objectively pathetic. It is. I can't argue with that, but it is one of those things. It's turns out you have to have it or your body doesn't work.
You ever think about this? It's 2024, and with modern medicine and all the things that have happened, how many of us would not be alive if we had lived our lives in the 1700s. I wouldn't be here.
All the time.
None of us
I wouldn't
would.
be.
I honestly think about that once a day. I'm not even exaggerating.
Really?
Once a day, I'll encounter some weird situation, and I'll be reminded, like, yeah, 150 years ago, like, half of these people would be dead, and I'd probably be one of them. Like, you see a person start coughing violently, you'd be like, that's not tuberculosis in this country, but in other parts of the world it is. And part of it is just the job that I'm doing right now. But I think it's very reasonable to, like, check yourself on that. And it's like, when you have that in your head, it's a lot easier to be grateful for things, like, to be like, people, I get this too, in part because, I think the state of medicine, even before the war in Ukraine, wasn't great. But, my family in Ukraine is, like, pretty neurotic about very small things. Like, you get a cut or something, they'll be like, oh, you have to disinfect that. You have to make sure that's okay. I get a cut. I'm like, man, if it gets infected with anything, I'll just, go down to urgent care, but I'm going to wash it with soap or whatever. No need to freak out. But of course, when you don't have, like, efficient or effective urgent care or infrastructure, and yeah, you get, like, a little paper cut, or you get, like, a thorn in you or something, like, it can get infected. You can lose your hand or worse.
One thing, just in our lifetime, particularly our generation being kind of like 80s babies here, the improvement of cancer treatments, particularly for childhood cancer treatments, is insane from when we grew up. So if we were to get ALL, which is the most common childhood cancer or blood cancer, when we were born, the survival rate was about like 15%. It's now like well over 95%.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's been cases like in the last, not so much recently, but about 10 years ago, a mother tried to withdraw her kid from cancer treatment just because she was like, oh, we just don't want to do it. It's, the chemo's too harsh and blah, blah, blah. And CPS and the court system stepped in and was like, no, you can't do that anymore. Like, it's one thing if, the odds were 50-50 or something like that. But like when the odds are over a 95% chance that you're going to survive and 100% chance of death if you don't.
I feel like part of the vaccine thing and, like, all this stuff where people go nuts about healthcare is, like, a solid, like, a big part of that, maybe even 50%, has got to be people who just kind of aren't up on that yet. Like, really don't understand the pace of medical innovation over the last 30 years.
You're exactly right. Yeah, it has to be. There's a great podcast I love to listen to. It's called History Daily. And it's just like little 15-minute, like, today in history kind of thing. It's really well produced and stuff. And they just had one on smallpox, on the eradication of smallpox. And I'm like,
bring it back.
It's 15 minutes. Listen to this and explain to me the anti-vaccine situation, the position. It makes no sense to me. It feels very, I would say, uneducated, but it is intelligent people that are taking taking these positions on the anti-vaccine. And it's just like, can we just lean into it and be like, holy cow, that's incredible that as a species we've made these advancements. But then you see like a YouTube clip and you're like, nope, Earth is flat. Like, I don't get it. It's wild. We live in a weird time.
I think the vaccines are almost a victim of their own success, that we don't see these things anymore. And so there's no natural fear of these diseases. And so then you start worrying about all these minutiae things of like, well, what's in the vaccine, or maybe a side effect to it. But like, no one's scared of, measles anymore because you've never seen it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get into a discussion, a debate with an anti-vaxxer. Because
no, you don't.
Yeah, I know, it's a losing battle. You're right.
They come up with stupider shit. That's the problem. Like, it's a belief system. It's not an idea. It's not an information. It is a belief system that they have the infrastructure for. And like, you can prove them wrong over and over and over again, and they'll move the goalpost.
Right.
They'll just come up with something else. If it's not the autism, it's the aluminum in it. If it's not the aluminum,
right,
it's causing like, immune deficiencies. If it's not that, then it's causing some sort of endocrine thing. And they'll just jump idea to idea there. And you can show them the evidence for all of it. And it'll just piss them off. It actually just makes them more angry.
Have you ever seen that doc, Beyond the Curve? It's about flat earthers.
Mm.
Well,
I think that's the
fantastic
one. How does it end with they buy a very expensive laser? Is that the one? I saw a documentary on flat earthers.
There is a laser involved. Well,
yeah.
The best is the guy who's bouncing stuff on the end of a hammer, and he's like, "My brain coach said that this will help my brain." The brain coach. But they did 2 tests that they conceded would prove the curvature of the Earth. They did the tests correctly. Both proved the curvature of the Earth. And after both tests, they said, we must have done something wrong.
Yeah, there was the documentary I saw. I thought that was the name of it. Maybe it's not, but they get like this. We pooled our money, like they were excited. This one guy got like thousands of dollars, this hyper accurate laser that can measure. They believe in that science, I guess. They can measure the fall of something. So he's like, I'm gonna get, we're gonna find this flat piece of land. I'm gonna get as far away as possible. You get like close to the horizon. We're gonna shoot a laser, and we're gonna show that it's going to end up in the exact same spot relative height to the ground. Therefore, there's no curve, right? So they did it, and it was an end scene. And he goes, yeah, that laser beam's like 5 feet above my head. And the guy's like, oh man. And then it just goes to credits. It's like,
oh man.
Yeah, that's the curvature of the Earth, dude. Oh man.
I don't want to get too much on like my soapbox about the vaccines, but it's something that I deal with on a daily basis. And it's so frustrating because it's something that like I have so much, I don't want to like be smug, but like so much expertise, so much research in this, and have dedicated like my life to this. This is one of the biggest things that pediatricians do is public health and vaccination stuff. And I always tell people like there's really only 3 possible scenarios that are true. We're either all pediatricians are evil people and want to poison children, and we know it's bad and we want to do it, or we're too stupid and we're just big pharma shills and we want that check and we are just complicit with it, or we don't get it, or we know that it works, we give it to ourselves, we give it to our own children, and we recommend it for everybody else. Those are really the only 3 viable scenarios for vaccines. The other one that gets me like statistically with the COVID vaccine, people are like, oh, it's so controversial. Do you know what the uptake rate for physicians was for the COVID vaccine? It was 95%.
And what is uptake?
95% of physicians got the COVID vaccine. So, I mean, these are the people that like know the science best, and we're like lining up and they're like, please just give it to me. And then everyone else is like,
I think another component of it is that we're all relatively speaking also pretty healthy. And I mean, like everyone's got this or that wrong with them. Their hearing's a little bit bad, or, you get older, your knees start going, arthritis. Lots of people have an allergy to this or an allergy to that. But to us, like the standard for a perfectly healthy human has like continued to creep forward. Whereas in the same way that like, child mortality rate in rural areas of Afghanistan is something like 50% today. And I'm guessing that's probably what it was in the 17th century in like England and Germany. And child mortality rate is not that now here in the developed world. Like you're looking around in the 17th century, most people who have survived like are maimed or have some sort of like scarring from smallpox, or like healthy then is like you can get around and you're able to do work. Like you can hold a spear if you're in the military. Healthy now for all of us is, like the picture of good health. Like your blood pressure is perfect. Your heart's in good shape. Your vision's all of this stuff. And so I think another piece of it is that people have this like totally, I mean, for our day and age, like reasonable, but overall throughout the whole of humanity, somewhat unrealistic expectation for, what a perfectly healthy human is. It's not perfectly healthy. It's like reasonably healthy. It's like you can get around and you can do stuff and you can think and you can talk, and that's fine. And when you have that, like when you're looking for perfection, then like getting vaccine harmed or something, or like taking a drug and having a side effect is a worst case scenario for you. It's like, well, I mean, I don't know, if you're nauseated or you have a headache or something, like you drink water and you go to sleep and you wake up and you're okay the next day. Like sometimes that happens.
It's what you were saying earlier is like, you just back in the day, the death was everywhere. Right. So it was a lot more believable that it would happen. And that's why like I want to get into a debate with a anti-vaxxer, because what do they also, the belief systems also coincide with some other belief systems, such as back in the day, things were better, right? The real foundation of America and the original idea. I'm like John Adams, right? You would believe what John Adams believes. Well, Abigail Adams exposed her children to smallpox so that they would be immune when they actually got smallpox, and ended up saving her children. Like, they believed in vaccines. They didn't have it wasn't vaccines back then.
They smeared bits of smallpox scab
yes.
into a cut and got not as bad smallpox.
Exactly.
Is what it came down to.
So if you're anti-vaccine, you're anti-John Adams, is what I'm saying.
Well, I always think it's funny because
explode.
no one just has that belief as a fringe belief. It's
Right.
if you got one of them, you got all of them. There's a comic. There's a comic who was really funny here. I really liked him, and we didn't. When COVID stopped stand up for a little while, I didn't see him for a couple of years, and then I finally did a show with him again. I was like, oh, looking forward to seeing a set. And he opened up talking about his vaccine injury. And I was like, well, I've never even heard this term before. And then sure enough, his whole set, he's just Russian propaganda and just like nutty shit. That's his career now. Like, he found a lane and he has this big following, just like spouting all kinds of conspiracy theories and Russian propaganda based. So
Interesting.
I've yet to see someone who just has one conspiracy theory.
That's interesting because you have the mainline comics, you have like the religious comics, the clean comics, the conspiracy alt-right comics or libertarian comics. Maybe.
I wouldn't even call them alt-right. It's like it's one of those guys who's so far left, he's like just lost in a field, and he can kind of see the far right from there.
Those people I've found
because there's no curvature,
right? Like if I hadn't interacted directly with Russian nationalists, I think that's the thing that really that cures just about everybody that I've ever met who's sort of even flirted with that area. And I think due to my political support for Bernie Sanders back in 2016, I ended up moving in some of those circles and encountering some of those people. When you meet real Russian nationalists, that being in those rooms will expose you to, some of the most vile, violent, upsetting people you will ever meet. Like, imagine like not just death threats, but like death threats against your family. Imagine meeting a person who knows who you are and hates you and really wants to do you harm. And the only thing that's preventing them is that they're not there right now. But a lot of those people, like, I think that the people I know on the left, I still believe that the people I know on the left, if they knew that those people, those Russian nationalists were out there, they wouldn't say this stuff. It would be upsetting enough to them to kind of like knock them back into Earth's orbit. But unfortunately, that would mean exposing them to really vile and awful and violent people, which I would never want to do. But I know exactly who you're talking about, Ryan. It is pretty funny that it's like, it's not just like the one thing. It's always like a bunch of really weird stuff where you're not even sure where the stuff's connected. You're like, biolabs in Ukraine, like, you are aware that like that country has electricity like 3 hours a day. I mean, do you know what goes into any type of laboratory, particularly one that deals with like microorganisms? Presumably they need electricity for like 24 hours a day, right? I mean, think through the practicality of this stuff here, but of course they're not interested.
That's what's so frustrating is with all the conspiracy things, there's a lack of practicality, and all the arguments fall apart within minutes of like, not even taking like Occam's razor to it, but just like any sort of practical thought. You're like, oh, that doesn't make sense. And yet they just dig in. One thing that's weird in Colorado, we have an interesting statistic. I don't know if this is still true, but it was about 10 years ago. We had the lowest vaccine rate in the lower 48. Alaska has the highest. And it's weird because
Alaska has the highest vaccine rate.
No, they have the worst vaccine.
Oh, okay.
rate.
Okay. I was like, wow, that's really surprising.
One of the things that Colorado's turned very blue over the last like decade, but it is still a very libertarian state. And like, I didn't even understand this concept before, but there are liberal and conservative libertarians. It's just different flavors of the same kind of general idea of just like kind of free spirit, can't tell me what to do, that sort of stuff. And so one of the things that plays in with the vaccine rate is while Boulder, this is what reminded me of what you're talking about, the political ends meeting, the political spectrum meeting at the ends. Boulder has an odd statistic of highest education rate with lowest vaccine rates. And so these are the hyper liberals that are like too smart, you can't tell me what to do. And then you have Colorado Springs, where like I think that's the seat of the RNC. There's a bunch of it's super conservative, and they're the ones like the government can't tell me what to do. And it's like these two ends of the spectrum are meeting there, just because like again this whole libertarian aspect of it.
I'd like to see the Venn diagram of highly educated, low vaccine, have a YouTube channel. There's got to be a pretty good overlap of that, because what they want to do is tell everybody about what they think.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, I also think I've seen that the lowest vaccination rates in LA are Beverly Hills. So definitely the wealthiest, maybe not, maybe Malibu's wealthier, but one of the two, and probably the highest educated. You'd assume based on income.
All of Gwyneth Paltrow's friends.
Yeah.
Don't get me started. I remember you had that when your old podcast, Ryan. You had the Gwyneth Paltrow
Goop Price
segments.
Is Right.
Goop Price is Right. How much is the gold toilet paper dispenser?
Yeah.
What
so remember the $26,000 mahjong set?
No. I mean, whatever. I don't want to get into it. I have a special place in my heart for her where I'm like, you're just a very famous, somehow people like you, shyster is what you are.
Well, she's an actress.
I know what she does for a profession, dude. I'm just saying, like,
I thought, isn't she like a Nepo baby too? Isn't she like a?
Yeah.
But I mean, she did. I mean, she's been in some. Yeah, she's been in some pretty great films.
Yeah,
but like her belief system is like, why are people like other famous people are like going to her whatever conferences and like pushing her stuff? I'm like, that's crazy.
Well,
that's crazy.
Have any of you ever almost died in a funny way?
Funny way, no. I was in a coma for a few days.
What happened?
When I must have been 5, and I got really sick, and my mom took me to Walter Reed or something like that. I think Quantico first, but took me to a military hospital, and then I just got real sick, and I started I had grand mal seizures, multiple grand mal seizures. Which, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, is that both sides of your brain, Eric, are having electrical storms? I think a grand mal seizure, I think, is what that is.
It's basically, it's hard to explain a seizure. It's just kind of like almost think of like a circuit where it starts to like signal itself, and then from there it's kind of goes out, and basically your whole brain is just kind of overexcited all at once.
Yeah. So I was having multiple grand mal seizures, and I slipped into a coma. And they medevaced me to Children's Hospital, and I was in a coma for a few days. And I was at Children's for a few weeks. I came out of it. I still have vivid memories of being in that hospital, and I got the G.I. Joe Cobra Command Center as a gift. I was like, yeah. Tell my brother
thought you were going to die.
Yeah. Well, I got last rites. My priest came,
Jesus,
and gave me last rites. It was pretty wild. I didn't know that part until later,
dude.
That's when I was unconscious.
I was hospitalized at the same time. Mine was less dire, but I was in the hospital for 5 days when I was 5, and I did not get the command center, but I got Castle Grayskull out of it.
Nice.
So that must have just been the norm in 1985.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was nice because I was the younger brother. I never got the new stuff, and I was just like, yeah, it was great. It's crazy though, because now they never knew why. There was never a cause. There was a suspicion because shortly thereafter, when Children's, I think it was with Children's or my pediatrician was trying to say, we need the medical records. They had lost all medical records from me at Quantico or Walter Reed, one of the two. And, or maybe it was Belvoir, whatever, some military hospital. They had lost the records. And there was you talk about conspiracy theories. There was a suspicion that maybe somebody had put in the wrong IV and give me something I shouldn't have had.
Potassium.
And might have potassium.
That would kill you.
But yeah, they never had children's hospital doctors there never had an explanation for what happened. And I had severe migraines for probably about 10 years after that. They tapered off. I would miss school because I would just be walking up the stairs and just collapse from the pain of just severe migraines.
It sounds like you had like viral meningitis or like even like encephalitis.
No one's ever said that. That's really interesting. Maybe, but I feel like that's something they would test for in a child. Meningitis in a child is something that would be a standard panel, I would think.
You would think so. I mean, but it's the military,
especially
hospital.
Children's Hospital in DC. I mean, that's
but usually they do like a spinal tap and stuff like that. I think I did have a spinal tap.
I don't remember that, but my mom said that was hard. I think I did have a couple spinal taps.
If you were having seizures and were sick, I'm sure they did that.
Yeah, but it was pretty wild. And then years later, as an adult, my priest from childhood, I was raised Catholic. I went out to dinner with him, and he was like, told us the story. He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember when I gave you last rites, and I was praying, and I told God that if this kid dies, I'm leaving the priesthood because I can't bury 2 kids in a year. I think it was something like that." And I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of heavy on me. Like, I don't, don't change. I don't know. It was just kind of heavy for me to hear. I was like, oh, okay, all right. That's what I was gonna say. Now you have that. I know that I had grand mal seizures. I know that I slipped into a coma, and I knew that I was 5. I had migraines for years, nothing afterwards. Now, and no known cause for it. Now go to MEPS and join the military. Good luck, right? So I go through, and my recruiter gave me some great advice that has followed me for my entire life. I said, hey, I was in a coma as a kid. So that could be a problem going through the medical screening for the Marine Corps. And he goes, are you worried about it? I was like, no. He's like, don't let them worry about it then. I was like, okay. He's like, don't lie, but don't let them worry about something that you're not worried about. I said, okay. Because he's got a quota. He's got to get me through, right? So I go and I'm talking to the flight surgeon or whatever. And he's like, And when did you, and I didn't put anything about seizures on my medical forms. He goes, when did you have a seizure? I was like, I'm sorry, what's that? And he goes, you see, it says here you're allergic to Dilantin. And I didn't know what Dilantin was for. I was just always told as a kid, make sure I never get Dilantin. It's an anti-seizure medicine. So he said, if you were given Dilantin, that's because it was to stop seizures. When did you have a seizure? I was like, I don't know. Who knows? I don't have no memory of that. And he was like, yeah, you're not getting the Marine Corps. Maybe you can get a waiver, but not today. I was like, okay. I was like, oh, there goes my dream, my whole plan. So I had to go to my pediatrician and get this waiver. I had to get like certified documents that I've never had a seizure since in his care and all this stuff. So I got a waiver for that, but it was it's a little tricky for unknown cause of seizures. The military doesn't like that answer. Yeah. So Adrian, you got what? So we know I almost died. Ryan almost died. Adrian, you got a story?
Yours wasn't very funny.
No,
disturbing.
No, it was not funny. No, it was respectable at least.
The funny part of it, if there is a funny part, the part that struck me as funny anyway, was that I'd never thought about this before, but it sounds from the description like a seizure, like the seizure you were having was that your brain was just sort of like too active. So I was envisioning somebody like standing over you, yelling at you to stop thinking, like don't think, stop thinking. The brain, you're using your brain too much, like trying to get you to.
Do you think you did it on purpose? Like you would just try, you were like, I heard if I can cause a seizure, I will get the Cobra Command Center.
And miss school for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Think real hard about it, but in a very unfocused way.
No, I don't think you were here for this episode, Adrian, but we already went over on the dumbest one on the podcast. So I don't think it was overthinking that caused it.
No,
that was
the thoughts. I'm not putting I'm not saying these were the best thoughts. I mean, any brain could have you could be thinking about Tickle Me Elmo or Big Bird or something.
I'm just counting sheep and it's too much for my little brain to handle it. It's overheating.
Right. As
What's
I understand
after 11D?
Now, I'm not a doctor. So I'm making a pitch that I'm the stupidest one on the podcast.
No, don't say that. No, we don't think you are. See, that's how it works, guys. That's how you correct that. Fucking assholes. When I said it, they were like, yeah, yep, checks out. Anyway, what's your story, Adrian? Afghanistan or something else?
Something else, but it is military related. I think that the funny way that I almost died was it was my 10th jump out of an airplane. And I had run a marathon 2 days before. And we knew that this jump was coming up for a long time. We did the marathon, but a couple of days after the marathon, if anybody's ever run a marathon, this is the only marathon I'd ever run. I trained a bit for it, but not super rigorously. And the thing that training does for a marathon is like it really aids in your recovery. I didn't train super rigorously for it. It's the first time I'd done it. I felt like I was in good shape. I was smoking and drinking a lot. So a couple of days after this marathon, I was walking backwards downstairs. I mean, like I could not move my legs enough to like walk downstairs normally. Like my legs were completely tore up. And so I go to my commander, the company commander. I was the second platoon leader in an airborne unit. And I was like, look, sir, I don't want to complain or anything, but I'm not sure I should do this jump. And he's like, well, not only are you doing the jump, but this is your 10th jump. And tradition says that for the 10th jump, you got to jump a fully loaded pack with a radio in it and everything else. So
I thought it was going to be you got to jump naked or something.
Oh no. Maybe maybe if it was special forces, they'd do something funny and cool like that. But no, for me, they just gave me a lot of weight. So a situation that was already optimal was complicated by there being like 75 pounds between my legs, which is not a normal situation for me. And so we get there. And the thing you need to understand about jumping out of an airplane too, is that you actually physically do have to jump. That's why it's called jumping, because to jump creates the distance that you need to get away from the airplane and kind of like have a clean parachute opening and everything else. So it was a static line jump. So it meant I didn't have to do anything special. The parachute got pulled out automatically. I just had to sort of, what did I have to do? I don't even remember. I didn't have to pull a ripcord or anything like that. That all happened for me. I just needed to navigate once all of this had happened. But because my legs had no strength in them, were all tore up, I get up there, we're in the plane. I got 75 pounds between my legs. I shuffle up to the door barely, and I just kind of tumbled out. I tumbled out. I didn't jump out because I couldn't. I had no force in my legs. It was taking everything I had just to get up to the door. Now, when you tumble during a jump, that's a bad thing because the parachute is being opened automatically, but you're tumbling. And so the thing that happens when you're jumping, when the parachute opens, is that you control like where you go by pulling on the left risers. These were old parachutes. That's supposed to pull you to the left or the right.
How do they open automatically?
It opens automatically because there's a line connected to it that feeds back into the aircraft. So the force of your body pulls the line. The line okay. It pulls. It's not really an automatic opening. It's
okay.
Like
gotcha.
Think like D-Day invasion.
Yeah,
D-Day like those movies where they just jump out and the parachute's already open.
Right, that kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah. So instead of what happened was because I tumbled, the parachute opened while I was tumbling, so I tumbled inside the parachute.
Oh my god!
The risers got risers got inverted, but not only that, I got sort of like trapped in the parachute. So my leg was tangled up and I'm hanging upside down. So I'm head first. My foot is like tied up in one of the risers and I'm like, okay. And you've got about 10 seconds before you hit the ground. I'm like, okay, if I hit the ground head first, that's going to be pretty bad. So I got to figure this out, So I'm like fussing with it and I free myself and I don't know exactly how much time has gone by, maybe like 5 or 6 seconds. I free myself and I get sort of like back upright. So at least now I'm going to hit feet first, which is what you want to do. But the risers have become inverted. So I'm drifting very close to like a cornfield and then there's like the nice soft grass that I want to land in. So I'm like, okay, I got to get away from the cornfield. So I pull on the left risers as hard as I can to drift left away from the cornfield, not knowing that because the risers have been inverted, because I've tumbled, this is actually going to make me go right. So I yank on the left risers and I go way into the cornfield. I get dragged through the corn and then, So I didn't end up dying, obviously. I just had a much longer hike with my, sort of weakened legs, and I had a good story, which I get to tell occasionally, as I just did now.
Marine friend of mine was worked on farm with corn, and corn husks are painful. You don't run through a cornfield. Like it's not comfortable from what I hear. So man, that's just insult to injury.
Exactly.
Actually, it's injury to injury.
Exactly.
Injury to injury, I guess. Yeah. Man, ouch. Oh, well. Anyway, you want to tell your banana story again, Ryan?
You know what? No.
I'm sorry, man. I keep giving you a hard time.
But I got another almost death. It was kind of a funny one. I was in Fairbanks, Alaska. It's really cold there in February, like negative 50s, negative 60. And I wasn't dressed for it because I was coming from Indiana. And so I was dressed for Indiana cold. And I lived in New York. I biked there in the winter. I was thinking, how much colder can anything feel? I thought once it was like 10, everything felt the same. It's just not the case at all. When you get to like negative 20 or whatever, it feels like you're being stabbed. So I'm wearing it was like a long sleeve shirt and a hoodie, and it was a hoodie and with a track jacket over it, and like negative 50, negative 60. I go in 2 days early for my show, and I'm like, I'm just staying in the hotel, just ordering. Domino's was the only thing that delivered to my my hotel, and they were like, there's a barbecue place 2 blocks away if you can get there. There's no delivery. So I decide I'm just gonna brave it, and I'm gonna do this. Everything's covered in ice. They don't even bother, So I get to it, and I'm okay. I'm freezing, but I'm okay. And then I start walking back. I'm talking to my friend Tony on the phone because I'm thinking, if I'm talking to someone, I'll at least, I'm not going to let myself die on the phone. I'm not going to freeze and just fall on the ground and die.
For barbecue.
Yeah. So I'm talking to him on the way back. I've got one more block. I'm like crossing the street. It might have been like 3 blocks. It was a little further. I'm thinking back. But I'm crossing. I slip. I fall in the street. Someone's making a left, coming in like into this intersection where I was, so close to my head that my hair touched the wheel. And then
that's a crazy way to go.
Yeah,
get your head run over.
Nearly just head to. The rest of my body was somehow I fell like slipped and fell forward. Then I'm quiet on the phone for a minute, and my friend Tony's like, "What's going on? You all right?" And I said, "I just slipped. Almost got like my head almost got run over by a car." And he starts laughing, and he goes, "What a loser!"
Yeah, your near-death stories are Darwinism. It is.
They're very avoidable.
They are preventable.
Yeah. They're so avoidable.
Well, Ryan, I'm really happy that your head did not get run over and that you're here with us. And with that, I think we are going to sign off. Before we do so, Ryan, do you want to plug anything?
No, it doesn't matter.
Oh, wow.
RyanConnorComedy.com.
Wow.
Book
What's it all worth?
And stuff. Yeah, sorry, it did sound a little defeatist. Yeah.
And Adrian, you can check out his stuff on Wrath-Bearing Tree. I don't have anything. Never will. We'll see you guys next time.
Cool. Sounds great.
Adios.
Music for Baggage provided by Quincy Ledbetter. You can find his stuff at qledbetter.com. Graphics provided by Megan Weaver. You can find her at meganweaverart.com. Special thanks to our premium members for their support. You can become a premium member by clicking subscribe in your Apple Podcast app or by visiting thebaggagepodcast.com/support to sign up or to gift a membership to someone. A percentage of all proceeds go to charity. If you have any questions, comments, or a good story to share, please email us at thebaggagepodcast@gmail.com.